Hi, I'm David Judson, Editor-in-Chief of Stratfor. Joining me today is Lauren Goodrich, Chief Eurasia Analyst. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
The topic today is the upcoming St. Petersburg Forum. We've got President Putin of Russia doing a fast pivot from China, where he is today, to catch up to this economic summit of sorts, which is particularly interesting, I understand, because of the nature of the guest list, who is coming and who is not. But before we get into that, I'd kind of like maybe you could explain to us and our viewers, what is this forum about? Is this sort of Russia's Davos, or is this one of those summits you read about in the airline magazine?
It is a lot like Russia's Davos, I would say. St. Petersburg Economic Forum is a place in which the Russian leadership has tried to rally investment and rally the symbolic nature of showing that the world is interested in Russia and that Russia has a lot to offer to the world. Each year, the Economic Forum has kind of shifted in what its goals are, what its tasks are, and what the importance of that investment in Russia is. For example, in 2008 and 2010, it was really about, can we get companies in here to help modernize and help invest into the privatization of the Russian economy? Because that was where Russia was focused. This year is a little different. Yeah. This year is about who are our friends still with everything that is happening between the West and Russia.
With Putin coming off the meeting in China, where we were talking just before we came into the studio, there may even be a play involving investment from China in Rosneft, where BP is already. That would be an interesting three people in the party.
Very much so. I mean, Russia, this week for Russia is all about showing that it is still an economic powerhouse. It's still a good place to invest, whether you're from the East or from the West. And so we have Putin in China on Tuesday and Wednesday, in which he's striking these unbelievably enormous energy deals that would not only bring Russian energy to China, but would bring China with a stake inside of Russia. Right. So it's Russia turning east, but now with the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, yes, there's going to be a lot of Asian interest at the Economic Forum, but it's really about to see who from the West is still willing to be friends with Russia.
Right. This is the RSVP lists, who's in, who's out, as kind of an indicator who's on board with the American posture versus the more reticent European sanctions posture. So what does that look like? How's the guest list shaping up?
Well, the guest list has changed right. as things have been developing over the past few days. It was very interesting that when the guest list was first announced on who accepted their invitation from Russia to come to the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, a lot of U.S. firms outright rejected coming to the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, such as Visa, PepsiCo, ConocoPhillips, Alico, all rejected coming. But it was only U.S. firms that were rejecting. Where the Europeans, the guest list was a mile long on so many of your largest European firms still willing to come. That's changed as of this week. We have had a pullout of invitations where people who had initially said that they were coming and are now saying they're not coming. The largest one is E.ON, the German energy powerhouse.
Yeah, but is that? There's a bit of a debate there. Is that is that a sincere pullout, or is it like this the minimum sort of gesture that you can take if you want to keep business as usual with Russia?
That's a very good point. For the Germans, I would say it's the minimum symbolic gesture they can take. E.ON can't break with Russia. Germany can't break with Russia. But they still need to show that they're not going to condone and support all of Russia's moves, especially when it comes to what's happening in the borderlands. And so this is a really good place where Germany can make a symbolic gesture. It's a little different for the American companies. For the American firms that are pulling out, I think that there is a little bit more sincerity because they actually have real pressure on them from the U.S. government to not do business with Russia. So we had Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley officially pull out from the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. But then we had someone like Boeing just happen to disappear off the guest list without formally pulling out. And so the U.S. firms, I think, are a little more under pressure, and it really does mean a lot more for real business than it does for the Europeans.
So Goldman Sachs out.
Morgan Stanley out. And Boeing has disappeared off the list.
Who's in?
As far as the United States, not much. Okay. Caterpillar is the main big U.S. firm that's still going. Okay. The U.S. oil services firm NOV is still going. There's not a lot from the United States. For the Europeans, there's still quite a bit. The largest contingent is from France. which is very interesting because that's a very interesting play of having Germany make the symbolic gesture while France still has all their big firms, especially Total and GDF, are all still going to the Economic Forum. And remember, France is kind of in an awkward position at this moment because they have all those military deals with Russia in which they have stated outright that they are not going to be pulling out of those military deals. So they're still willing to do military business and energy business and investment business with Russia, where Germany is the one playing the bad guy, at least at the forum.
Okay, so tag team wrestling from the Europeans. Okay, now back on the American front, how about Visa? We've been reading a lot about Visa and the credit cards and pulling out back in. What's the latest on that?
Well, Visa was one of the first firms to come out and say that they would not be going. And that's very important to the Russians because out of all the Russian vulnerabilities, Russia is vulnerable on only a handful of sectors in which they're open to the international market. Energy, of course, is one. And we've seen that, the European energy firms saying they're still going to go and deal with Russia. But Russia's very vulnerable on the credit front in that it doesn't have its own domestic credit processing system. And it uses Visa and MasterCard for 95% of their credit processing. And so if there are further U.S. sanctions on Russia, Visa and MasterCard is going to be hit hard, which is going to mean Russia's not going to have a credit processing system. So for Visa to not show up to the St. Petersburg Economic Forum is something that really worries the Kremlin. And is one of the reasons why Russia is now fast-tracking setting up their own system just in case U.S. does put increased pressure on Visa and MasterCard.
A lot of moving parts.
Very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I think we're out of time. Thank you for joining us here at Stratfor. Thank you, Lauren.